Hi, my name's Scott Joseph, and I play the Emperor.
Thanks so much for joining me here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, so this is your first interview, at least in the gaming genre. And interestingly
Absolutely.
enough, this is actually my first time being seen by people in my community. So that's like a lot of
Ah,
firsts today.
excellent. So we're in the same boat.
We're definitely in the
Kind
same
of,
boat.
sort of.
I think the first question I have is how did you get into voice acting?
Okay. I mean, off the back of acting, really. You know,
Hmm.
when you're training to be an actor, invariably the course has a voice section, and I got on really well with my voice coach, and kind of always stayed in touch with him, and he really helped me discover the power of the voice when you're solely relying on the voice to tell a
Hmm.
story. Which I'm not saying, once I trained with him, I was ready to conquer the world. I had a lot to learn. So it took me a while to kind of pick that up and pick up the confidence, I guess, to know that what I was doing might be good enough for people to pay me to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of weird. I graduated from my acting class. I mean, I got into acting because a couple of friends of mine at school, I was actually getting into art and design and stuff like that. And a couple of friends I wasn't really enjoying the courses I was doing. I was enjoying art, but not the technical design stuff.
Hmm.
And we got into a conversation one lunchtime early on in what's called our sixth form, which is studies that you do over here. And they were going around the group and they were asking who could be an actor, just off the cuff. And it got to me and everyone kind of laughed. And they had every right to do that because at no point up to that point had I shown any interest whatsoever in wanting to act.
Yeah.
But something in me, a really kind of, I guess, narcissistic part of me went, "No, screw that. I could be an actor if I wanted to." And then I went home and I was kind of, why are you so annoyed about this? Um, and after I stared at myself long and hard in the mirror, I realized actually maybe there's something here. Maybe I should explore this.
Yeah.
So I got into amateur theatre, and then the rest is kind of history. Did some semi-pro stuff, went and trained, and yeah, and then went out and I guess the voice side of it, I guess that comes about because as an actor, you spend a lot of time resting. They call it resting when you're
Like
out of
in
work.
between
It's sort of like,
jobs. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I'm resting at the moment. It's like
Hmm.
you've had a heavy run and now you're resting. Well, I spend a lot of time kind of resting, and so if you're constantly trying to polish up your acting, your monologues, your stuff like that, and do mail outs and things, and this is back in the time when you had to create envelopes, write letters, post stuff off. There was
I
no
know all
email and
about
stuff like
that. It's actually very
that.
annoying
Yeah,
whenever I have to send out snail mail because it's like, really? Can't I just pay online? But
yeah, exactly. But this was back in the time before all that, and so I kind of branched out, and I was doing what I said, working in at the BBC,
Hmm.
and I heard some guys that were starting up a service called Audio Description, and they were saying, "God, we really need a guy to do this." And I was right by them, and I said, "Well, I'll do it." And
Hmm.
so, I ended up doing audio description, which I've done ever since. So that's scripting and voicing for the visually impaired.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so we write and voice what happens in TV and films when no one's talking,
Yeah.
which is has really helped me find my voice and get used to mic technique and stuff like that. So, for example, today I did about 8 hours of voicing for audio description. So
Oh, geez.
and because I had so much time in front of a mic and access to a mic, I just thought, well, I might as well practice voices, my accents,
Mm.
monologues, commercials, and stuff. And I got a demo cut from that, and then got representation, and just started gigging really,
That's
getting a few
awesome.
jobs here and there.
So,
Yeah.
what was your first video game role then?
Oof. My first video game, it's a game called Star Citizen, which I think is still kind of being developed.
Yeah, but a lot of people, it's funny because it is being developed and worked on now, but there's still a lot that you can play, as far as I understand. I haven't actually played it myself, but I have a friend who actually put a lot of money into a ship and stuff like that. So he always tells me, if you want to do the free fly event, now's the weekend to do it. And I'm like, I have to download it. I have a bad connection, though, so...
I mean, I did a section called Squadron 42, and there's a section in that where you can train to be a fighter pilot.
Oh,
and
yeah, I've heard
I'm the
about
guy that trains you.
Like, because don't they have...
Gilly.
Well, they have racing and stuff, too, don't they?
Yeah.
Is that kind of like where he's in?
No, he's all about combat. So very much like the guy in Top Gun Academy. You want to go to Top Gun? And he was very much a kind of hard ass. Just kind of not particularly easy to like, but I didn't mind that. It was great fun to do. That was just voice acting.
I actually looked the character up on your YouTube channel. I was trying to find it, and I kept finding Gillian Anderson, and I'm like, I don't want Scully. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't play Scully. That wasn't me.
Well, apparently she was in that game too, at somewhere, because she showed up for Squadron 42 specifically.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I had no idea, but then I had typed in Scott Joseph, and then I found Gilly. I'm like, finally, geez. So I wanted to have a better idea of what the role was, but.
Knows me as Gilly. I've served in 6 squadrons and qualified on almost a dozen ships. So if you put in the time, I'll get you on the path to dogfighting with the best of them. We're gonna set you up in the ship on the landing pad over there. Hustle over and let's get going.
Yeah, I think I stuck a video on my website. I think there's some gameplay video that some fans put up, and that's really helpful for us voice actors to kind of borrow a bit of that to see how it plays and stuff. And the character went across really well, so I was quite chuffed with that.
Did you find you got a lot of roles after that? Like, did it kind of start flowing in, or still resting periods?
Kind of. There was resting. There were resting periods, yes.
Yeah.
Kind of small characters, and a lot of the time in gaming, because it's a really brutal industry, because it takes a lot of investment and a lot of belief. And a lot of kind of effort to get a game off the ground. And the bigger the game, the more complex the game, the more chance there is that it'll pass certain green lights and then get cut off. And so I did a few games where I'd done quite a bit of work, but they, for one reason or another, they didn't go ahead.
Canceled it. That sucks.
Yeah, and you're like ready, all lined up with to get the credits out there and yell about it, and then all of a sudden it doesn't come out.
Oh, believe me, I know
it's
what
a
that's
shame.
like. I know what that's like. Believe me.
The other stuff, I did do some other. More recently, I've kind of fallen back into it, and so I did Scrag the Slaughterer.
Oh yeah.
He's a character in a Warhammer, Total War, Warhammer 3. And that was great fun. But that was like nothing I'd ever done before, because it is very guttural. So that was like hour-long sessions, and then because you're doing guttural roars and stuff.
Was it like one of the orcs?
Fun. He's actually a bit of I think he's a demigod or a god, and he's I think he was a servant to a god. That's right. It's been a while, but he's got this. He's cursed with this meat pot on his back that he puts his prey in to feed himself and his minions, and he's, as punishment for something he did with his god, said to his god or didn't do. Yeah. He had his limbs removed, and like these horrendous carving devices put on his instead of hands.
Devour everything, leave nothing unconsumed. Crush, cook, consume the meat of all that is not us.
So he's a really nasty piece of work, but
Now
great
you've got
fun.
me curious because I saw him on your channel too, but I didn't actually watch the video. I was like, oh,
Ah,
I think I remember seeing that, and I'll have to watch that when we're done though, because now you got me interested. Because anytime you get something, I actually really like horror a lot too. So,
right.
anytime I hear like weird stuff like that, I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. But
Yeah.
one of the things that got me really excited about, talking to you was that you actually voiced another character from a game that I've played. It's funny because a lot of times, you'll know one character in a game that you're playing, like Baldur's Gate 3, but maybe you haven't seen any of their other performances or heard
Yeah.
it in this case. Make sure I say it right this time.
Oh,
Expeditions Rome
that's right. Yeah, the
and
expeditions. Yes.
Caeso. There we go.
Caeso Quintius Aquilinius.
How
Yes.
do you remember that? I must have seen his name a million times and I still can't remember that. You're like, I know the whole thing.
I think I do. I mean, I probably forgot. Someone will probably correct
It
me on
sounds
it because
right.
we had
It
for that
sounds
role
right.
we had. Well, thank you. For that role, we had to learn. Well, for the whole game, we had to learn lots of Latin,
Mhm.
and there was modern Latin and classic Latin as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was great. I mean, that got me through lockdown. That game because I just spent an awful lot of money having a brand new website built, having my brand new studio put together with a custom built booth inside, and then lockdown hit and I was like, oh my God, what has happened? And unfortunately, some work came my way, and I managed to audition for Expeditions,
Yeah.
which was with Josh at Pit Stop. And that was so much fun to do. And the guys at Pit Stop are just amazing to work with, and taught me a lot actually, because that was just voice acting. So again, Josh would give me
mocap.
notes like, no, Josh would give me notes like, when you say that line, you're drawing your sword. And it just fills you with a picture in your head. You're like, yes, God, I get that now. Okay. And it informs your delivery. And that was really helpful. And I guess Caeso opened the door to Baldur's Gate for me a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I don't even really typically play games like that. Like Rome was the only one I played because I was looking for games with romances specifically, because it's just a feature that I enjoy in games. Like it adds a level of depth for me,
Yeah.
and, I heard from a couple people that there was romance in the game, and so I went, I'm like, well, let's play it, let's try it. And it was actually like pretty fun, but it's different from what I usually play. Like it's still kind of like an RPG, but it's also more like strategic, almost like like an RTS, but not quite an RTS. It's cool. It's actually really fun. It got me really into a lot of that Roman everything, because you're so immersed in it, with the way everybody's talking and the domina and all that, and it was just, it's cool. And it got me interested in a lot of other things outside of the game too. But I actually really liked him, like even outside of the romance, which I wanted to talk to you next about how some people kind of had issue with it. But even as just because he was originally a Primus too. Right? And so he's like a big deal in terms of experience. And so he brought like all that to the table and was basically just this, he'd probably follow you into hell. He was just very loyal, and I thought he was probably one of the best ones,
Solway, what's going on? Keeping an eye on you is a task that carries its own reward.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'm
Yeah,
not just trying to flatter you either.
No, I mean, but it's the character, and he was that kind of character. He was born and bred military, and so he would, if he was given, he had to train the player, and it was a step down probably from what he'd done before, but he was given an order, so he would complete that order to the best of his ability, and he judged people against that a lot of the time, and himself quite harshly sometimes. So I think I quite liked, I think that's what I found fascinating about that role, is that they did bring in a personal, it wasn't just all strategic war, moving about from camp to camp. There were fuller characters. They were people. They had a life outside of the war. And the fact that you could explore that as a gamer, I think, added another level to that. And I think, I think it was interesting. Obviously, you know, it's really hard to please all the people all the time, but I think more and more with these types of games, your quest is your quest. It is what you make it, and you make the decisions in it. So if you don't feel like you want the romance side of it, because that's not your cup of tea, then you don't have to have it in there. You can literally kind of shut that down and play your quest as you want it. And I think that's good. You know, I think that's pretty realistic, really. That's, you know, if you feel that way in real life, then that's what happens.
That's exactly what I mean, though, about like the depth that it adds, you know. And I remember, I mean, I couldn't honestly think of anybody else I would have wanted to romance. Like, there were some other choices, but I was just like, I feel like there's not really a choice. And I remember I spoiled it for myself, and I was just looking up like, well, when does the romance happen? Because, you know, it's a lot of game, and, you know, then you're wondering, did I miss it? You know, and it's hard sometimes to look it up and find out. And I accidentally spoiled it, and they were saying, that they didn't really like how it went later because, well, and I found out on my own that, you know, there's a point where I guess you go back to Rome. Yeah, you go back to Rome, and there's a woman that approaches him, because that's the other thing that was really cool too, is that he comes off like really hedonistic, like, you know, drinking and, you know, other things.
Well, if you're going to go out and die, if you're going to go out and die the next day, then get drunk and
Well, I mean, and that makes so much sense, you know.
I don't think I'll be able to leave Rome so easily.
Is this about a woman again?
In a way it is. Do you remember that seller who approached us at Marcellus Vipsanius's? Well, it turns out she was telling the truth, at least partly. She has given birth to a baby girl.
Yeah,
like if you're looking
exactly.
at it.
But not to, I guess not to everyone, but you know, that was his character. You know, he played hard.
Well, but he was also very honorable. You know, like, I actually respected that he stood by, you know, his child. So, to each their own. I feel like people are always going to complain about something, but
it's part of the rich tapestry of gaming.
It is, yeah. It's like you just realize at some point that you can't make everybody happy. You try to make as many people as happy as possible, but there's always going to be, you know, this group of people who are like, it just wasn't good enough.
I think also, because I think when I'm playing games, it's really hard to please me, because I don't all the time know what I want, but I'll know what it is when I play it. And that's not to say when I play a game that I like, I'm going to like the whole of the game, because there are elements where, because of my character, my personal character, I'll be like, oh God, what do I decide here? Because that means closing a door, and that means I'm going to miss out on that. And I don't know what that is, but I don't want to close the door. And so I have those Jeopardy moments. But I'm learning. That's the beauty of the game. You can have another playthrough if you want, but you know, that's the beauty of it, is you've got to close doors. You have to be bold, make decisions.
You can even make, if you want to be a save scummer, like a hard save and then just go back to it later, because I do that a lot just to save time, because I'm making content and it takes time to play through in the first place. So oftentimes to save time, I just go back and do it from that point, you know, save myself like 8 to 15 hours sometimes. So
I do that, I have to say.
So you worked on expeditions, and then you went on to Baldur's Gate 3 after that?
I mean, I can't remember, when did expeditions come. I think it was a few months, and then a casting pack came out, and Pitstop sent it to my agent. My agent said they want to see you for, you know, these characters. Can you record something? And then, because this Baldur's Gate was and we didn't know it was Baldur's Gate. I didn't know it was Baldur's Gate when it came in, because they used production titles, which could be anything. I mean, they just splice together words sometimes. It could be the marvelous Spongiform or something like that. You know, it could be absolutely anything. It could be, I don't know, any kind of banal words you could think of and put together in a sentence. That's what they can sometimes call it. And you're like, this is a working title. Yes, of course it's a working title. And so I didn't know what it was, but this was performance capture. So it's not just doing a voice audition. You have to set up your camera like you do acting. And it was a few scenes that I had to record. So you have to be off book.
Did you have to do this at home, or did you go into the studio? Oh, wow. How do you do it at home?
So I mean, it's funny because in the acting business, you know, a decade or so ago, maybe a bit more, I don't know, I lose track of time. I'm getting old. But a decade or so ago, you'd have had to go there wouldn't have been any kind of, can you film it? And now it's kind of like, well, have you got a green screen at home or a gray screen? Have you got lights? You know, and you know, you have to roll with it. Yeah, I've got lights, I've got a studio, I've got a gray screen and stuff like that. So, and it's just easier, and it saves so much time and hassle traveling in on the train and stuff like that. So yeah, I set it up in here and put on my tight black top and cycle trousers, which are figure hugging, because
I saw
just
the picture on Twitter. When everybody was like, I think you put that picture up. Yeah.
yeah, with the white balls attached. But even for home, I thought, well, you know, give them an idea of your physique. So that's what I did, and then recorded the scene. And because actually my wife wasn't around at the time, and there were lines to play back to, and rather than have no line to react to, I actually went into my booth, and recorded the other lines in a different voice, and then worked out roughly what the pauses would be, and then hit play, hit record out there, got into my starting position, and the whole scene happened. So I reacted to my lines as they were playing through my speakers. So that's how I worked for that. But typically it's much better to have someone else reading in the lines. And sometimes they don't even do that. Sometimes they just say, can you say this line? Here's a bit of emotional direction for you. Here's the state of mind they might be in. And then they go through like 5, 6, 7 or more lines that you have to deliver like that. And it can be that bit, you know, kind of bitty that you have to do it. But I did that, sent it in, and got the part. But that wasn't the Emperor. That was another part.
What was the other part?
That was Marcus. There's a guy called Marcus in it. I can't say too much because depending on how you encounter him might give too much away. But yeah, he's in it.
Yeah. No, I know who. I was actually thinking just then, I wonder what the other ways you can encounter him are, because I know the way I encountered him. And that actually has me very curious, because I think that's what's so crazy about Baldur's Gate 3 is how many.
Just massive.
It's just crazy. I mean, it's so crazy. Like, coming from a genre in the industry where you don't really get any choice anymore. We used to, and they kind of took it away, and they took away that player agency and kind of condensed it down to, here, look, you can customize your character, but that's about it, you know? And you can pick a dial.
Have done that and more.
Yeah, well, this is amazing. But anyways, back to what we were talking about Marcus, and so that was the first role. That was the role that you were actually hired for initially.
Yeah, and I did a few other characters as well with different accents and stuff.
Who else did you do? I'm just curious.
There's a cook, there's a sailor, I think. There's a guy and another guy that are looking out on because very often we're not.
You don't really know.
They might be such small characters and we don't really know, and so I wouldn't even know where they are in the game, but. Some of them are, you know, they're all really fun to do, because usually I think I did a lot of them at the end of the Marcus work, and it was really good fun. You know, they're just like, and now, you know, we're going to do this, and you just got to not just voice another character, because you don't just put on a voice, you have to act it. So your whole physicality changes, from Marcus, who was, quite upright and and assured and full of himself and and very, very confident, and then to maybe a meek cook. So you sink the shoulders, arch the back a little bit, and suddenly, because you're seeing yourself as an avatar, you can see the change, and that helps to inform how you act.
Yeah.
And then that in turn informs your voice, because your whole physicality changes. It automatically affects your voice. So yeah, that was really fun.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and I did that, and to be honest, I thought that was it. I went back home. I was like,
how did you end up becoming the Emperor then? How did that come about?
Well, again, I think a couple of months went by, and then I got sent through another audition pack, and there was this character, and they said they've asked for you to audition for this one, and I was like, they do know that I've played some. Yeah, they know. Oh, okay, well, great. So back in the studio, back in the tight black outfit, looking good, but there was something about this character that I really connected with. I didn't know anything. I was just given a title for it. It wasn't the Emperor. It was another name. It was just something really innocuous. And so Did you know it
was a Mindflayer?
No.
No. Okay.
No, I don't think. No, I didn't. I don't think so. No, I didn't, because I would have thought, well, hang on, what? And then I've done some research.
Yeah.
So I didn't, but what information I've been given and the audition scenes that I've been given really allowed me to sink my teeth into it a little bit. Pardon the thing for it. That's quite disgusting, considering who he is or who they are.
Just don't eat my brains, please.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, but there was none of that, and it was just a really nice acting scene, and I really enjoyed it. And I hoped once I'd sent it off, I thought, that'd be great to get that one, and I did. They said, yeah, they want to call you in, and at that point, I had no idea how big the character was. I thought it would just be one session, and I got in. On the first day, I was incredibly nervous for some reason. People kept walking by at Pit Stop. Pit Stop, they're lovely, very friendly. You go in, do you want a coffee? Do you want a drink? How are you? If you take a seat on the sofa, they'll be over to do the fitting and stuff. I was like, great. And then they remembered me, obviously, from playing Marcus and stuff. And then a couple would come over and say, oh, you're playing the Emperor. The Emperor, yes. And I'd been given a load of lines that in an Excel sheet, and so I'd read the lines, but you don't really understand the full context. You just get given the lines with a bit of emotion direction. So you've got all that going around in my head, and I just want to get in the studio and get the character down so that I can focus on the performance.
Real quick, can I just clarify, just, for other people who aren't really sure? I'm honestly not 100% sure, because I've heard of Pit Stop a lot. So is Pit Stop like the motion capture studio? Like it's just like a big studio where you can record all that stuff?
They're the motion capture. They do the voice recording as well.
They just do it all. Okay.
Yeah, big production house in London. And so, they got this, and they were busy. But the performance capture it's a full body suit with a little lovely. Well, you've seen the pictures.
Oh no, I know that. I just meant about Pit Stop specifically. Do you know, just?
And also, we got gloves. We got power gloves.
Oh really?
So it mapped our finger movements.
Oh, that's so
if
cool.
If we reached out like that would, all the finger movements would happen.
Wow.
So I was like, oh God, I get some of these.
I was gonna say.
They would work.
So you were trying to get in the studio, but like everybody was,
yeah. Well,
talking about how you were going to be the Emperor.
And with an exec from Larian, and he said, "Oh, this is Scott. He's playing the Emperor." Oh, hi Scott, you're playing the Emperor. And so many people kept saying it to me, and I had no idea who this character was yet. And but it just fed my nerves. I was like, why are people saying I'm playing this character? Obviously, I'm playing this character, but why are they saying it with such So I
That's
wanted
gotta
to
be
find out.
rough.
I just wanted to find out so that I could work it out for myself. And the first session, I can barely remember. I was so nervous. I just wanted to get the voice, get the performance. And that it was a steep learning curve. It was like finding out the character, and then also because of the character being locked in it. Because of the nature of the characters, because he's 7 foot tall, or they're 7 foot tall. They float, and the Emperor is a lot of
And
the
wait,
time when
another
they speak.
thing too is not. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're very tall too.
Yeah, well, kind of, 6'5".
6'5" is tall.
Yeah.
So like, did that help? Do you think, like, already being really tall? Did they ask you how tall you were? It does make you wonder.
I don't know. Well, that's why I actually thought I wouldn't do very well in motion capture, because when I first did motion capture years and years ago, I was told the industry quite likes average because they can shrink it and stretch it. So that works really well for them. I guess as the industry and the tech improves, the size doesn't matter because the software can cope with it. So I guess if you're playing a 7-foot character, but then it really doesn't matter with mocap anymore, because they can, like, I'm 6'5", and I was very fortunate in that when I got in the volume, which is what they call the space where we record, they were able to, because usually you get an avatar that you can see of you. It's not just a skeletal figure, it's a fleshed neutral figure. But they actually had, for me, a Mindflayer.
Oh wow!
And because of the face tentacles, we had to cheat the head up a bit, because otherwise they'd go into your chest,
clip right in.
Yeah. So again, you're talking about informed performance. You're having to push your head up, and then in order to giving the floating notions, I had to kind of breathe with my shoulders like that. So once you've started on the first session, you then have to continue that through the whole, all 40 plus hours of recording. So it was interesting. But because because the Emperor speaks a lot with their mind, the actual physical actions of him are quite limited. They wanted that kind of stoic, reserved thing. So very often, when I wanted to kind of go, oh, well, that's interesting, you couldn't do that. You'd have to maybe twist a little bit and then come back,
react less,
and everything. And when if he reached out, it was as though he was moving through water. So it's a very slow motion. But at the same time, with motion capture, with performance capture, you have to return to your base pose so that they can stitch it all together. So if you've raised your hand too high and you've reached the end of your sentence here, you've then got to put it back down and get to your base pose.
Oh wow!
And so you're thinking about that while also reading the lines off the screen in front of you. And there's a lot to think about.
What was the Emperor's base pose? Was it just like standing?
Yeah, it was basically, so you stand kind of with one. You can't see this.
I know. I can kind of tell by your posture.
So with one foot the right foot facing forward, and the left foot slightly at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then arms at the sides, and you have to return to that base pose.
It's funny because that is something I had just not really considered in all my years of gaming. And I didn't really know a lot about mocap before actually looking into talking like to you and some of the other voice actors. It's actually been kind of a new thing for me to learn about. So you're teaching me a bunch, but now every time I play, I'm going to be looking at that and going, oh, there's the base pose. you know?
Well, and hats off as well to the Larian team that have to stitch it all together, because they are creative as well. They can do a hand animation alongside and on top of the motion capture.
That's
so
wild.
there are, it really is insane. and a labor of love.
Oh yeah. I mean, because I know from what I used to know of, game development, you'd get, a skeleton, you'd rig it with a model, and you would have to do everything individually. Every animation, every cinema, that would be, something that somebody actually was posing it almost like a still frame animation. So mocap has got to be a lot easier in some ways, but also way more complicated. Do you know, like there's still that level of work and complication, but
yeah, I mean, I guess, when you're acting in front of camera, there are sight lines. You might be acting to someone who's not there, and so there's a whole set of rules and skills to learn when you're acting in front of camera, and it's exactly the same for acting for performance capture. You just need to surrender to it, learn it, understand it, and not let it inhibit your performance. And that's when you really rely on the movement director, the voice director, the Larian creatives who might be dialing in and listening and watching, and the script writers and everything like that, because it's really a collaborative effort. I can't convey that enough. It's, particularly because of the nature of gaming, of the way the lines are recorded, it's very much like and you probably know this, but you can imagine a tree as the main kind of through path of the game, but then you have branches of dialogue and quests and stuff, and every time you make a choice, that's another branch. And suddenly, you're on a really complex branch that fragments in all the different directions, and you have to record all the eventualities, which is a different line, or the same line with a different emotion behind it because it's come from a different experience.
Wow. I mean, that's just
so
way over the concept of anything I could do on my own. So
no, exactly. And as actors, you get as much into your head as much as possible, but the director is there to and the other people as an encyclopedia to kind of help inform you're coming from this angle with this line. So really remember that it's not the same as you've just done. This has happened. Right, gotcha.
And that's so helpful. So
yeah,
you went in, you didn't really know who you were playing. Once you finally found out who you were playing, did you just go home and look into everything about Mindflayers?
Yeah, once I picked myself up off the floor, yeah, I kind of did a bit of research, but I don't know, it's interesting because you're never given the whole picture. So you kind of want to make the character yours, and if they want you to do a lot of backstory reading, I think they would supply the material that they wanted you to read up on. I did do a little bit of lore reading, but to be honest, it's a massive world.
I know.
I fell down the rabbit hole a little bit and thought I could be here for
Forever.
several months.
I know, believe me, I know.
And I've got a family of 4 kids, so I haven't got the time necessarily to do a massive deep dive into the lore. So I very much worked on the nature of the character, and I was quite lucky in a certain sense because they are quite guarded. And that's been beautiful to watch, because that's with the Emperor, it's shades of grey, and I really wish I could go into detail on the Emperor, but unfortunately I really can't because of the wonderful thing that is NDA.
Yeah.
And because of the nature of the character, I can just say it's shades of grey, but it's been wonderful watching you guys, streamers, play the game, and really their reactions to some of the questions that are posed by the characters, not just my character, but by characters, but particularly in my instance, the Emperor, and seeing how it lands, because I really hope it lands a certain way. And sometimes the reactions have just been like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. And that's
Yeah.
exactly right. It's just, yeah, I couldn't, as soon as I saw those kinds of reactions, I was like, oh man, I've got to start playing this.
Yeah.
I've got to start playing this.
I know for me, it was so bizarre because, well, actually, back during early access, you know how there's the Dream Guardian as well. They used to call it like, well, now there's so many different names. I usually just call it the Dream Lover because that's like been the long-standing term that I've used. Like before the game launched and they called it the Visitor or the Guardian or whatnot. So I'm just like not quite used to using that, even though I think a lot of new people are using it instead now. But basically it was just like a person that would come visit you when you slept, when you were sleeping and you'd have a dream. And they were constantly kind of trying to talk you into doing something, but you didn't really know what, you know? And it's funny because they've changed it now in the launch. They kind of, like, there's still the dreams, but it's not quite the same, you know? Like, they kind of stretched it all out. And I think they might have actually gone a different direction with it, or, you know what I mean? Just refined it a little more, like the idea. And,
yeah.
Well, so I thought, I don't know. I thought, I was kind of into it. I thought it was a cool idea to have somebody that was like always with you, even if it's a little weird, you know, because like, you know, having somebody with you all the time can be romanticized, but it could also be kind of annoying, like when you don't want them to be there. Do you know?
Yeah.
And there are moments like that too in the game.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But what blew me away is like that there actually ended up being a romance in the game, and I had no idea that was actually going to happen. Like I was playing through and I'm like, I'm going to try for it, but no idea. Like it was not spoilered for me at all. I tried to stay away from everything. Good. And when it happened, I'm like, I don't even know.
Is this happening? Is this actually going to happen?
I wish I could have recorded it because I was literally like, you know, like the super serious face. Oh God, what do I pick? All right, let's pick this. And then, oh my God. Some of the scenes just made me laugh. Like I had to ask you. So you obviously at some point found, all right, I'm doing a romance scene here. And like, how did that feel? Like, I just have to ask that too. Like, even knowing that there was going to be a Mindflayer romance scene, like, were you just like, that's cool? Or were you like, oh man, because now you have to take this kind of emotionless character, do you know what I mean? Who can barely even express themselves and suddenly think about them in a romance, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I probably embellish in my head the character that I'm playing in anything, just so that I can fully react as much as possible. And so I try to feel the lines that I'm saying, even if they're very stoic. There might be some suggestion of emotion, and even if it's shades of grey, it might lead people to think, "What do they? Hang on, what do they mean?" And then you're forced to, as the other person, to, what am I? Who am I? What do I know? What do I know about this entity, this being, and what do I want? And so, yeah, when I delivered the lines, that's what's happening. You're told it's a romanceable character, so there's going to be a romance scene.
So you did know.
Yeah, I think I did, not after the first day, but I think someone said there is a romance scene for this character. Are you okay with that? And I was like, yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do it. It's got to be done.
Were any of the lines more difficult to deliver than others?
Are you talking? Yeah,
in the romance
about the
scene,
non-verbal lines. I think I got it in one take. I think.
Wow.
And I'd love to say that that's just because I knew exactly how to, but I think it's just, yeah, whatever I did then kind of worked.
Yeah.
And fair play also, you know, because you can probably tell that the Emperor is my voice, but I guess they wanted that kind of other world in your head, echoey kind of feel. So as much as it's me, you know, my voice as well, a lot of credit has to also go to the sound engineers and the sound designers that work on the character as well. So yeah, I think they brought a lot maybe to that line. I don't know.
I'm thinking
I
to
mean,
myself, do I want to play a clip of it here?
No, I don't think we want to play a clip of it. You know, let's
Not
let
on the interview,
people
but for the video. No, I wouldn't do that to you.
let's let the people at home discover or not that for themselves.
I remember being completely, I just was shocked. It was like a whole emotional response because I tried. I was trying. It was like a science experiment almost to see if I could romance this character who then turned into a mind flayer. And I was like, I'm still going to try. Cause like, you know, it's still, for me, it just reminds me so much of almost like a Beauty and the Beast thing where, you know, do you still care about the person even though you've spent a lot of time together and they are protecting you, even if it's like a mutually beneficial sort of situation. You know, it's you've talked to them, you've shared a lot, and all of a sudden, just because they don't look the same, you don't like them anymore, you know? And so for me, I've always been strong on character more so than looks, you know, because man, I can't tell you how many pretty faces I've talked to, and like the second they talk, you're like, you know what I mean? Like looks can only take you so far. So but
Yeah.
In this case though, I did want to keep, you know, trying. I'm sorry, I got like completely off topic there. Like my mind roamed too far.
But I think that's the beauty of the game in general is it's really, and I keep going back to, it's really your quest, and you make the calls, you call the shots, and you live with the consequences of those shots. And I think it's really interesting, just the diversity of experience
Oh yeah.
that you can have with this game.
Well, but it was
and it
funny.
makes you want to play it again.
Oh, I'm gonna probably be playing this game for like 3 years. I mean, I'll probably get sick of it at some point and take a break, and then I'll come back and be like, oh, I haven't tried doing that yet. You know, because there's so many different games out there. And then you pair it with the romance, and it's even more different. Because like if you go with the urge and a romance, it could be totally different than when you played normal.
Yeah.
You know, or you could even play the origin stories and romance other characters as well. It's wild. But I think what was funny for me is, even as somebody, that was, I think, the point I was trying to make, is that even as somebody who was trying to romance the Emperor, when it actually happened, I went through so much. It was like, is this happening? And then it was like, what do I do now that it's happening? Because I have no idea how this is even supposed to work, which I think was really smart. Because they put in this whole element of like your character not necessarily knowing Mind Flayer anatomy. And believe it or not, there's a book you could find, I think, somewhere along the way that was about Mind Flayer anatomy. And if you found that book, there was a different option that helped you, which was crazy. Like,
well, that's yeah. I mean, crikey.
It's an insane amount of detail. But the Mind Flayer romance aside, or the Emperor romance aside, I was still really curious about who you would romance in the game, you know, when you play.
Oh my days. I think as I'm playing it, I'm gonna let the relationships bloom or not. As I play through, and let my my experience with the characters dictate how I decide what to do. But I'm not going to be averse to romancing if it's so
Happens.
comes.
But is there
like
any character that's on your radar right now when you're playing? You're like, I kind of like them. Come on, we need to know. You know, this is like the number one question people ask me to ask you. Who do they want to romance?
It's difficult at the moment because I don't. And plus, a couple of them are my friends as well. So it's just.
It doesn't have to be awkward. It's just, you know, I mean, geez, I saw a couple of them on there reading horny tweets the other day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
I think it was like, was it Shadowheart and Lae'zel, I think?
Lae'zel.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's just one of those things where I guess like those of us who nerd out over this stuff, you know, I mean, obviously I have a whole channel that's basically dedicated to romance in games like this, you know, and so we just like to know, you know, we're just inquiring minds.
So apart from the Emperor, is there anyone else you're interested to quest with?
Oh no, now you're interviewing me. Well,
I just asked one.
My main is usually Astarion.
Right.
It's funny. I think the first one I ever romanced was Gale. Because this is funny because I romanced him because I thought he was actually the same voice actor as Alistair, who is from Dragon Age Origins, and that was probably my favorite romance ever. And then I realized it was not the same voice actor, and I'm like, it doesn't sound 100% like him, but I still enjoyed it until it got to a part where I don't want to spoil it for you, but there was a part that I didn't like as much in early access. They cleaned that up a lot though for the launch. But then I ended up.
I guess that's the point of early access is to.
Well, and I remember I even was sending Larian the videos. I don't know if they watched them or not, but I was like, this is like a whole video of feedback. So, you know, like if you want to know what I think, this is what I think.
I think they take on board a lot, judging by the social media stuff that they put. I think they take on board an awful lot.
Well, and then I tried Astarion, the second game, and that's the thing too, is he hated me my first game. He was just like, ugh. He would be so mean. He would just be like, you again, that face and everything. And I'm like, well, screw you. You know? So it is funny. And then I realized he's just more into like kind of a more chaotic play style, you know, where Gale is very the goody. You know, he likes when you're good and when you help people. And Astarion doesn't like helping people as much unless they're his kind of people or the people he wants to help, you know, because he's more like chaotic neutral almost, you know, and so then I started playing like that, and I actually had a lot of fun. I actually found that is like the way I enjoy playing. I just like kind of doing whatever I feel like doing, you know, and sometimes I do good stuff and sometimes I do bad stuff, you know?
Not so good stuff.
I still want to go in, and I honestly want to try all the romance. I wanted to try Will too, and I haven't even seen what a lot of the girl romances are like at this point. Like I know Carlax, because my husband romanced her. And so I got to see all the stuff from him. You know, I was like, watching over. What do you mean how?
You're an infernal engine. You touch her and you explode.
I don't want to spoil it for you because like she's probably all really good choices at this point, but she's a really cute choice. Like it's very heartfelt. Like he actually said that he liked romancing her because she reminded him of me, because I kind of like wear my heart on my sleeve and I'm very honest, you know, and direct. And he's like, and I liked that there was that symmetry there, so I didn't really feel like I was cheating on you. You know what I mean?
Brilliant.
But yeah, and that's what's really cool is
and
like,
you went, uh-huh.
Oh, I don't care. I mean, because I'm always talking about romances, and it's kind of like my thing at this point. Yeah. So, you know, I don't think he really cares. I certainly don't. I try to encourage it, actually. I'm like, be more into these games so that we can talk about them, you know, because I love talking about the games. That's why I even do the YouTube thing.
Well, it's a part of the game. You want to see how it influences the game and how it influences the outcomes and stuff like that, which is great.
And I think that's another really cool thing that they did with all the characters is that it's not like, you know, it's like don't judge a book by its cover.
It's not cut and dry.
Yes, you know, it's like they might seem evil, but they might not actually be. And it might even depend on the choices you make throughout the game. You might actually be able to steer them to be better, you know, and nicer. Yeah. So whoever you want, really, you can.
Yeah, you have an active influence on the characters themselves and the choices that they make,
which is so cool.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Cool. So real quick, before we go, I just wanted to ask, do you have any like big projects coming up or anything you can tell us about? Anything you want to plug?
I would love to. I mean, I did a small part in another game, and I can't mention it because of NDA.
NDAs are bummers.
I know they really are. And yeah.
Speaking of which, once your NDA lifts, I'll totally have you back here to talk about some of the crazy.
I need to do some research
Mindflayer
into whether
stuff at the
an NDA
end.
Ever lifts.
It should.
I need to do some research into that.
And then you also have to play the game too. Like, so you need to play the full game, and then no more NDA, and then like totally come back, and I'll I'll dish with you about it.
Absolutely. But yeah, so I'm on the gaming front. I think I'm done with that NDA small one. And so yeah, I'm back on the resting on that front. But I'm doing a big corporate project, which is actually voice presenting, recording.
Well, you were saying that you did like 8 hours today. So you're
that
busy.
wasn't doing that actually. That was I do about 30 hours a week of that.
Wow.
So that there's that always, and then supplement that with the stuff that that I also love doing, the freelance stuff, the acting, commercials and stuff like that. So there might be another commercial coming out soon. I think sometime this month. But again, until it comes out, you don't know whether it's going to come out, so you can't talk about it. It's just crazy.
That's frustrating.
Yeah, it is. But then when it comes out, you shout about it and hope people are listening.
And then you get like this too, like when you get these big, huge roles. Like I even saw you said something on Twitter, which I guess I should start calling X, but I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to.
I don't know how to. And what's the tweet called now? What is the tweet called? Someone help me, please, because I don't know.
I don't know. It's an X of an X. I don't know. I still call it Twitter. I have trouble. I have trouble calling it anything else. But I saw, they had that big, huge thing where they were putting up all the huge scores for Baldur's Gate 3. And you were like, I'm thankful for my small role. And it's like, he's so humble. But you had a big role. You were a big part of it, just like everybody else was,
Oh, I think, absolutely. And in fairness, I mean, I kind of meant like a small cog in a massive machine.
Yeah.
Like,
I see. I see.
Even though and I didn't want to kind of correct people or do any of that because I am still I don't know. It makes me feel I'm very new to it all. The whole kind of, I didn't expect it to be this enormous. And I'm not one of the main companions, so I
mean, but you kind of are.
I'm just kind of I'm kind of looking.
I've been doing 2 series since the game came out, right? I've been doing one on Astarian's Romance, and I've been doing the Illithid Romance one. And I'm almost done with Astarians, and I've been doing them like alternating. Like every other video will be, one Astarian, one Emperor, one Astarian, one Emperor, and I have so much more left to do with the Emperor, like so much. And I think I have like maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 at the most with Astarian. I've probably got like, I don't know how
do you
many,
know that? Is that because because you've already played through?
Well, I have already played through it, but also because I know about, usually I'll do it by a scene, and so if it's a scene that, probably like a scene that you would remember recording where it's like a whole, like this is the point where you meet here and this is what you talk about. Yeah. And so I know about how much time I need, and I usually try to keep it to under 20 minutes if I can. Just because past that, it takes a very long time to edit, and I'll basically go through the scenes and kind of break down everything, like what I'm thinking. And a lot of the times I write the scripts right after I see the scene so that it's still fresh, And so for me, playing is a lot of playing and then pausing and then writing, you know what I mean? But but all of those scenes, like I am right now in the series, actually the whole part where you find out that, it's the Emperor and the Mindflayer, I'm on 3 parts now of that. 3 parts. It's been huge. Like, I mean, and if I hadn't broken it up, it would have been over an hour because it's just so much. It's like the first part is, okay, you're here and Oh, and I don't want to ruin too much for you because
No, we
there's some
can't.
stuff you might not know
Oh,
about.
there's so much
Yeah, but
to talk about that I can't.
there's a lot to talk about. Just it's a lot. Do you know, like, and then you get, like, you talked about the shades of gray. And for me, I definitely can feel that because there's so much of a moral grayness, even with everything with the Emperor. And then there's also this part where you're like, why do I feel like he's BSing me? You know, because I feel like that a lot. And then I'll feel like, oh, he just told me the truth. There was a whole part where I was writing, wow, well, he just told me the truth. I'm so proud of him, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now he wants me to do this. And I don't like that, you know, and it's really all over the place, you know?
That's what made the characters so wonderful to, you know, and I'm really grateful to the brilliant directors that I was working with to help me navigate that path of just on the edge of, well, but which way? And I think that's the Emperor. That's the
he keeps you on your
path
toes.
that they have to take. Yeah.
We always joke, like, on the comments, I'm like, I'm seeing the red flags, but I guess I'm ignoring them for now. And everyone's like, red flags. You know? Reading the comments on any of those videos are just great. I don't always have the time to read them all, but it's funny because people will be all over the place, like, and people take it really seriously. I think that's what I enjoy the most about doing what I do, you know, is how into it people get. You know, I used to think that most normal people would think I was a complete and total loser for just obsessing over anything in a game, you know, even just talking about a game. You know, so many people who don't play games, they don't take it seriously, you know. And then if you talk about a character you really like or a romance you really like in a game, I just never in a million years thought that there would be a place for me with a group of people, like a lot of people too, who love talking about it and even just hearing my take on it. You know, it's cool, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's only going to grow as well as the tech improves, as the storylines improve, and the software and the processing enables them to encompass so much more diversity and of choice of world. I think it's going to get bigger and bigger, and it is already coalescing with the movie industry. And it's really exciting. I mean, you know, I got the PSVR 2 headset, and I was playing Call of the Mountain, and just for ages I was just stood on a cliff edge, just looking at waterfalls. Just it was lockdown. You know, shortly after lockdown, I just had a kid, so I wasn't getting out much, and I just thought, this is the next best thing. I'm just watching waterfalls here, literally standing on the edge of a cliff with a little bit of vertigo.
That is so cool. I actually haven't tried, and this is probably going to sound really bad because, you know, I'm like, oh, I'm such a gamer, but like I actually haven't tried any of the newest VR. Like from everything I saw, it didn't really look anything like what I thought VR was going to be like, you know, like when I was younger, you know?
No, I know what you mean. And I was a bit like that, but then something in me just thought, like I've got a little kid in me that's kind of like, oh, I really want that. I really want that. And the PSVR 2, I missed the PSVR headset when it came out, and it was too long when I finally got around to wanting it. And I thought, I'll wait for the PSVR 2. And then it was delayed for about a year and a half or something. So then my anticipation of it just grew that I had to have it when it came out. And, you know, I don't play it, you know, religiously, but as a form of escapism, I really enjoyed it, and I was really amazed at how much I was in the world.
Yeah.
And I think I like that.
You're making me want to get one.
Well,
actually.
but it's the same. It's the same as the Baldur's Gate, because that works in a different way, because it's so rich, because the script is so rich, the characters are so well developed, and all of that. It sucks you in, like you were saying. You become invested. It is something a little bit serious, you know.
Well, and
I don't think that's a bad thing.
Well, and this is really taking it to a whole other level. You know, I mean, like when I sat down and I started thinking, okay, so what do I do when I finish Astarion and the Emperor? And then you realize, well, then people were telling me, oh, well, you know, Astarian's romance is completely different when you play as the Urge. I'm like, really? And I didn't want to spoiler it too much, but I saw some of the comments they were leaving, and they were like, he's more understanding because you're dealing with something similar to like what he's dealing with. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, so it's a completely different romance based on just who you're like, it's wild to me. Like and so I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm going to be busy.
Yeah.
For at least a year, at least. I mean, like it's really going to be like, how much fortitude do I have to keep doing the same thing for an extended period of time? Because like the content's going to be there. And then they're already coming out with new things. Like they were dropping that update where they updated Karlach's ending, so I don't think they're going to stop that at any point, like I feel like there's probably going to be, I don't think I've heard anybody talk about it, but there's probably going to be DLC, and expansions and whatnot. That would be the smart thing to do. It's just keep expanding on it, but no, it's great. It's really cool. And, I do hope, they bring you back. Maybe there'll be some Emperor content. Yeah.
It would be amazing. Yeah, it would be. I mean, anytime I get to work in a world like this, I am very humbled. I'm just blown away by it. And, that comes across in what happened on the socials, because I just didn't expect. I think I was the last person asked the actors to say but I genuinely wasn't sure how I could announce the character I was playing. So I wanted to seek clarification, and it took me a while to put my head above the parapet and say, oh yeah, by the way, that was me.
It was funny. I had actually looked up who the Emperor was, like, and it took me a little bit. I had to find, and I'm like, because it's confusing, because they have, like the Dream Guardian, and then they have the different actors for each Dream Guardian. Then there were even the old Dream Guardian voices, like from early access, because they changed. Oh, no. Yeah, and so I was like, okay, so I guess this is the Emperor, and I went and I looked to see if you were on Twitter, and I followed you there, and then I'm like, well, he never really says anything. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I'm the Emperor. And I'm like, yes! That's when I was all like excited and I replied. But did you have anything that you did want to like talk about? Like, I guess, what I'd probably do is just send people to your YouTube or your Twitter or your website.
YouTube, yeah, the website's probably the best, just because YouTube, when you're an actor and trying to get hold of material sometimes, because YouTube is big up on obviously copyright, but actors need to show their wares, and so it gets really tricky as to they don't believe what you're using it for. So it's hard to put stuff up there. So I very much link from my website to the client's own websites and stuff, so I can have it on my website. So the website's the best place to go.
Okay. Well, and I'll put that up for people to go see. And thanks for being here with me. It's been awesome.
You've been awesome. I'm so relieved that I got a first interview done and dusted, and hopefully people don't mind me rambling on for a time. But no, it's been really fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I mean, and thanks for giving me a chance to, because like, man, it just like kind of took off from here. I found like I got you, and I haven't even put it out yet, obviously. But it just started going from there, so it's exciting. But anyway, well, thank you so much, and
thank you.
I guess just give me a goodbye. Maybe an Emperor goodbye.
An Emperor goodbye? Okay, so what would the Emperor say? This is goodbye, but hopefully not for long.
That's good. I like that. I got the serious face too.
Yeah, I can't do the tentacles. They take a while to grow in.
Hey, I just wanted to add in here at the end some of the things I didn't get a chance to say during the interview. I wanted to give a huge thank you to Scott Joseph. Thank you for being my first interview and just being so awesome. He is a seriously wonderful, down-to-earth person to hang out with. and I hope I captured that well enough for you guys watching the interview. I'm thinking I'll do an outtakes edition too, because I did have to cut some really funny stuff that just didn't fit into the main video as well as I had hoped it would. I wanted to try and keep things on topic as best as I could too without us carrying on too much. But there's also technical difficulties that can be hard to edit past as well, and we certainly had to contend with some of that. At the end of the day, it was an awesome experience, and I'm just very grateful to have been a part of it. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, as there is going to be a huge slew of new BG3 content coming out over the next few months, possibly years. I mean, there's a lot. Thanks to my Patreons for the support, and if you'd like to help support the channel too and get access to the private Discord and a whole other chunk of content on Patreon, then head over and make a pledge. I'll see you guys later.